Welcome everyone to our Conservation Connector on the fabulous Fox National Water Trail. And I'm Cynthia Canner, Executive Director of Prairie State Conservation Coalition. And I'm also a volunteer board member with Friends of the Fox River. So this is a wonderful opportunity to marry my day job, which is my life job, and my volunteer work with Friends of the Fox River. So as we know, when we work in conservation, we're always thinking about how we can better protect our world, and it's not something that turns off when we go to sleep at night, and when we hit the 5 p.m. work is done. That doesn't happen. So I'm really excited here to be joined with Karen Miller and Tim Holloway. And Karen will speak first, and a lot of you may know Karen. And she is the land use planner with Kane County. She's also the Illinois co-chair of the National Park Service designated Fabulous Fox National Water Trail. So she worked very hard on that designation for years, and you'll see that sign up and down the Fox River as you float down our beautiful river here in our watershed in the Fox River Valley. She's also a board member of the Fox River Ecosystem Partnership, among other things. And Tim Holloway is senior landscape architect with Hay and Associates. You probably see Hay and Associates everywhere. They're wonderful sponsors of many of our conferences and gatherings that we have, and we so appreciate their support. Tim has a thorough hands-on understanding of construction management and has overseen the successful implementation of a wide variety of projects. He's a registered landscape architect in Illinois and Wisconsin, and serves on the City of Aurora's Sustainable Aurora Advisory Board. And we're really excited about this program because it's going to lay out for you all a partnership in this river system and all that it can bring to our river towns up and down the river, and really help sustain our natural areas and vitality of our towns. So Karen, I'm going to let you take it away, and then we'll have some time toward the end for some questions.
Thank you, Cynthia, and thank you so much for asking us to come and talk at the Prairie State Conservation Coalition about one of my favorite topics, which is the Fabulous Fox National Water Trail. It's great to see some familiar names on the attendee list and also some new names, people that I don't know that hopefully I'll educate and motivate to enjoy the Fabulous Fox National Water Trail. So first of all, I'd like to give you some background information, and then Tim will give you some detailed information about a great project that we worked on in Kane County along the river last summer. So welcome to the Fabulous Fox National Water Trail. 200 fabulous miles across 2 states and 8 counties with over 70 public access sites. It all started back in 2014 at the annual Fox River Summit, which is held every March up in Burlington, Wisconsin. And if you haven't been, you should look into it for next March because it's a great day, bringing together both the ecosystem partnerships from Wisconsin and Illinois to talk about the Fox River. It's a day full of great presentations and good networking. So back in 2014, one of the presentations was by Angie Tornes, who worked for the National Park Service in the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program. And she talked about the National Water Trails System. So the National Water Trails System is part of the larger National Recreation Trails System. Water trails, by definition of the National Park Service, are recreational routes on waterways consisting of a network of public access points supported by broad-based community partnerships that provide both conservation and recreational opportunities. Now, on this map, you can see each dot is a land-based or a water trail that has been accepted and designated within the National Recreation Trail System. So a bunch of us that heard Angie's presentation up and down the river got excited about thinking about the idea of maybe creating a water trail for the Fox River. Now, originally, as I was thinking about it, I thought, well, maybe I could create a water trail through Kane County along the Fox River. So then we got together, those of us that were at the summit, and we decided that we would talk to Angie one-on-one about this opportunity. And she said, well, we really would like you to create a water trail for the entire length of the 200-mile Fox River. So we got together as a team and we applied for technical assistance from the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program, which supports community-led natural resource conservation and outdoor recreation projects across the nation. Our application was accepted, and we were fortunate enough to work with Angie, who you can see pictured here on the left, for 3 years to create the fabulous Fox Water Trail. And it takes a team. And this is a list of the original members of our, what we call our core development team. The Southeast Fox River Partnership, Southeastern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission, Fox River Ecosystem Partnership, Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, the National Park Service, Real Racine, which is the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Racine County, Wisconsin, Visit McHenry County, which is the McHenry County Convention and Visitors Bureau in Illinois, Kane County, Illinois, and the Village of Waterford, Wisconsin. The map on the left shows you the Fox River watershed, which starts up in Waukesha County and ends down with the confluence of the Illinois River and LaSalle County. It also takes a community. Wisconsin had, because of a previous project, collected the data that we needed to create our maps and our information for our website regarding the access sites and the portages along the Fox River in Wisconsin, but we didn't have that data in Illinois. So our core development team created surveys, questionnaires that volunteers could fill out and return to us. So we put out the call to volunteers, mostly paddlers, who would be interested in going out on the river and giving us this information, not only on all of the access sites, but the portages and also some segments that they might be interested in describing for us. So we provided this questionnaire both in paper form and also online so that you could bring it up on your phone or your tablet while you were out on the river. The vision that our core development team created is the following. From Lisbon, Wisconsin to the confluence with the Illinois River in Ottawa, Illinois, the water trail provides suitable access to the public to enjoy the quiet and active recreation, scenic beauty, abundant wildlife, and historic and cultural features. Communities along the Fox River embrace stewardship and public engagement to provide a sense of place. We also needed to create a community of partners. And this is the list of all of the communities along the Fox River, both in Wisconsin and Illinois. And here are some photos of some of our volunteers who helped us collect the data at over 70 access sites, 13 dams, and many different segments. The outcome from all of this data collection was the creation of a brochure that we could use for marketing purposes. We divided the river into 14 segments and created a different map for each segment. You can see 3 of the maps here on the screen. We wanted to create segments that would be readable for the paddler. And so you have your choice of either printing the map out before you go out on the river, or you can also bring it up on your phone or tablet while you're out on the river. We also created a website that has a bunch of drop-down menus on it. We have a safety information drop down that has all kinds of information from the Coast Guard. It has links to webinars and also safety information, trip planning guide. Also, what Bob had mentioned earlier, that the IDNR, Illinois Department of Natural Resources, has closed the Fox River because of flooding. The link to that website is also on our safety dropdown, as well as the USGS Water Watch daily stream flow, so that you can look at the river gauges that are placed on the Fox River and determine the flow and the height of the river when you are interested in going out. Also, we have a link to the National Weather Service and other helpful safety information. We also have access site information on all of the access sites. If you click onto the particular access site, you can find all kinds of information about the river mile, about where it's located, what town it's located, all kinds of interesting information, what type of carrion it might be, also the amenities that are at the individual access sites. And you can see on the maps that are on the screen, we have created icons at each of the access sites, which gives you information about the different amenities, such as restrooms, drinking water, picnicking, hiking, etc. And we also created signage. One of the requirements of the National Park Service was that by the time we submitted our application, all of the access sites needed to have signage. So we created two different types of signs that are at each access site. The first one on the left up there shows you the name of the access site, the logo of the Fabulous Fox Water Trail, and also the river mile. River Mile starts at 0 with the confluence of the Illinois River and travels upstream. So it gives you an idea of your location. 2 copies of that sign is at each access site, one facing the water for paddlers who are on the river, and then also one facing the land. And then the sign on the right includes a map of the segment where the access site is included. So you can see you are here on that map. And then it also shows you the surrounding area, so you have an idea of where you might like to paddle. We also have included our website, a list of safety recommendations, a QR code that takes you to our website, and again, our logo. And that sign, there's one copy of that sign that faces the land. So then once we had gathered all of our information and we created our website and our brochures and our signage and our maps, etc., we needed to put together an application to the National Park Service. So the Park Service has a list of best management practices that are recreation opportunities, education, conservation, community support, public information, trail maintenance, and planning. We had to prove to the National Park Service that each of these best management practices were being implemented up and down the river. We had a lot of great information to grab from because of all the great organizations, the local governments, and other stakeholders up and down the river that have been doing all these great things. So that was a very important part of our application. And we were actually told by the Park Service that we had one of the best applications that they had seen. We also had to include information from our partners. We had to ask each of the public landowners along the river for letters or resolutions of permission to include their part of the river in the National Water Trail. So we did get letters and resolutions from everyone. However, there is one caveat. LaSalle County did not qualify for designation as part of the water trail at this time because one of the criteria is that you need to have access sites that are no farther than 5 miles apart. And in LaSalle County, there is a section where there is over 20 miles between access sites. So at this time, LaSalle County is not part of the designated part of the water trail. However, we still have all of the information about the few access sites that are in LaSalle County on our website. The Park Service allowed us to keep that information on our website. And in the future, if somehow we do meet that criteria, we can take that back to the Park Service and ask them to include LaSalle County. We also needed to get letters or resolutions of support from stakeholders, from organizations, from elected officials, from local governments along the river. And we collected over 40 letters and or resolutions of support from these that you see listed here. Oops, sorry, just one moment. Forgot to mute my phone. I apologize. So yes, I have to say that when I was contacting all of these entities, everyone was just so positive about the idea of creating the water trail, which was very helpful in putting our application together. So we submitted our application on November 2nd of 2022, and Secretary Deborah Holland of the Interior Department designated 9 new national recreation trails on June 2nd of 2023. 8 of them were land-based trails, and 1 was our water trail. And then a couple months later, we received the certificate that you see here. So moving forward, about a month or two after our designation, I learned from our Kane County Board that they were providing $1,240,000 of American Rescue Plan funding from the federal government for planning, marketing, infrastructure for new and improved access and signage. We had also applied to the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity for a tourism and attractions grant for $270,000, which we received for improvement to and construction of new access sites. We also received that same year a travel and tourism grant for $100,000 for marketing. This year, we received the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity Marketing Partnership Grant for $100,000, which helps us continue our marketing of the Fabulous Fox National Water Trail. We also applied for a tourism and attractions grant for $200,000 to develop 2 more access sites in King County, and we're still waiting to hear about that grant application. So in terms of marketing, we interviewed marketing consultants in the area, and we ended up choosing Kim Gilmore, who owns Gilmore Marketing Concepts, Inc. in Elgin. And so she has put together the following marketing items for us. A brand and style guide that has a variety of logos that we can use for different ways of marketing. She has also put print and display advertising together, and we have advertised in different publications, including the Chicago Tribune and the Convention and Visitors Bureau's guides that go out each season. Also, some radio and television advertising. We held a contest on WGN a couple of years ago, and I was also had the pleasure of being interviewed by John Williams. We have a bunch of promotional merchandise that we like to give out when we're at events. Also, Kim created a website that is specifically for Kane County for the water trail, but that also links to our overall Fabulous Fox National Water Trail. Also, some drip marketing, and also some digital advertising. I also do, along with a couple of my staff here in my department, we do in-person and online presentations at events, different events that are going on around the county or even in other counties. So Kim has come up with this fun idea for a program to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the United States. And it's called Log 250 for America's 250. You can go on to the wherethefoxgoes.com website, which is our Kane County Fabulous Fox National Water Trail website. And you can sign up to log in miles that you do, different activities either on or along the Fox River. And it's going for this whole year. It started January 1st and it will end on December 31st of this year. And I believe that we're getting close to about 400 people that have signed up. And as you log your miles in, for the first 75 miles, you get an enamel pin, which you can see here on the bottom on the left. For 125 miles, you get a t-shirt. And for 250 miles, you get a medal. We've already had a couple of people who have reached the 250-mile mark. So it's kind of a fun activity. It's great to see new people who I don't know who have signed up to participate in this. And so please consider joining. So our other big project with our funding is called the Kane County Access Infrastructure Project. And as I mentioned, it's funded by the Kane County American Rescue Plan and the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, with the purpose to improve access site infrastructure along the Fox River. So we sent out an RFQ for an engineering firm to help us to choose the sites and also do the engineering work for installing the docks. And we chose Hay and Associates. And here is a poster that Kim designed for us that shows our 5 new launches. We also chose Earthworks to do the construction of the sites and the docks. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Tim to give you detailed information about the 5 new access sites.
Thanks, Karen. Let's see if I can share and make this work. Did it just a little while ago. Okay. So hopefully you can see my screen and you can hear me.
Yep, all good, Tim.
Okay, great. Step 1 down. And now I just got to get it to advance. There we go. So the first part of the project, working with Karen and the county, was outreach. The county, as Karen mentioned, had funding in hand, but no sites, no projects. So the county organized a luncheon. Great way to get people interested is to offer free money and free food. And we explained the whole project, and we had these cards available where folks could fill out a card signaling interest, or we talked to people. Some followed up with emails, a whole bunch of different ways. But after that, then we went out, and Karen and I and others met with the different communities, park districts, county forest preserve, all sorts of different groups that had ideas for projects and talked about, potential ideas, limitations, all that. By the time it was said and done, we had over 24 project ideas, and with budget, ideally for about 5 projects. So we had to come up with criteria to evaluate them. We didn't just want to pick who we liked best. So we actually came up with criteria. The first, and I'll just try and run down these pretty quick. The first being public landowner interest and involvement. And I'll admit, I'm used to being on the side of asking for money, not on the side with money to give people. But it was interesting because, well, everybody was deserving, but some people filled out a card, and then unless we tracked them down, we never heard from them again. Other folks, they filled out a card and then they'd email, thanks, it was nice meeting you. When do you want to get together? A week later, calling, and just you could tell some folks were just a lot more eager and interested. So, I mean, it wasn't a huge amount of points, but that we did take that into consideration. Of course, we decided as ineffectiveness of current facilities rather than effectiveness. So if you didn't have facilities or if they were in poor condition, you would rank higher. We did include permitting ease as a criteria. That one, it turned out all permitting was about the same, so they all kind of ranked the same on that. Proximity to comfort and support services, basically, was there bathrooms or other stuff like that close by to the proposed launch sites? Proximity and connectivity to local businesses. As Karen mentioned, economic development was a consideration in this, and it wasn't just, get out and paddle, but also once you're done paddling, where else can you do? Is there a spot to go out and get ice cream or a beer or whatever? Also proximity to historical, cultural, ecological, other features. Again, if you're out paddling, can you get out of your boat and go look at something else? Cost benefit analysis. You'd think similar types of launches would have similar cost, but spending more money for the same thing versus less money for the same thing at different sites was a consideration. Public interest, again, how popular were the sites? Public health, safety, and welfare. A couple of the communities had indications from their police and fire department that these were important sites to them, so we took that into consideration. And the last one was also a big consideration, resilience to uncertainty regarding potential dam removal. For purposes of this project, we're not pro or anti-dam. I know a lot of people have strong feelings both ways, but the bottom line was if we were going to spend part of this $1 million+ to create a launch, and there was a chance 5 years from now a dam would be removed and that launch would be high and dry, that would not be a responsible use of public funds. So we did consider dams as part of this, but again, trying to be very objective about it. So with that, entered all the sites, scored them all with the based on the different criteria, and ended up getting a numerical rank. So we could identify which sites, scored the most points. Ended up reaching out to them. And in fact, we said one per community. So if you saw in the last one, like South Elgin had 2 in the top 5. We said, you guys have to pick. You can't have both of them. So we want to spread it out a bit. One party in the top 5 also was the Forest Preserve District. They wanted to focus on some other sites. So even though they were selected as part of the top 5, they declined. So the 5 we ended up with were Montgomery Park, Clark Island in Batavia, Seba Park in South Elgin, Bartels Park in East Dundee, Riverside Park in Carpentersville, which doesn't quite exist yet, but will soon. And then IGAs, intergovernmental agreements between the county and each partner, because basically the county was going to pay for design, permitting, and construction of the new launch sites at no cost to the communities. The community just needed to agree to long-term maintenance and taking care of the launch sites. So a few design considerations once we had the sites selected. The Fox River, as some of you may or may not know, in Kane County is public waters. Other rivers, streams in Illinois can be privately owned. The Fox River from ordinary high watermark to ordinary high watermark is public waters. And with that comes some different regulatory requirements, such as restricting placement like of abutment walls or other shoreline features. You can't project into the channel. Restrictions on how far from the shoreline a dock can project into public waters. Even if it's a public dock, you can't block more than 25% of the channel width. And then restrictions on overall size and the length of the dock. So even if you weren't going out more than 25%, say you couldn't put in a 1,000-foot long dock, parallel to the shoreline, not allowed. Some other big considerations on the engineering side were flow conditions and water levels and how much they vary on the Fox. And just for example, the difference between like a 7-day low flow water surface elevation and a 100-year elevation was 7 to 12 feet, depending on sites. So we wanted to have these docks work in as much of those conditions as possible, really with the goal to get out to deep enough water to float your boat in the shortest distance possible while maintaining accessibility through the range of flows present to the extent practicable. So it's a lot of words, but it was a bit of a challenge, but we're able to do that. The other thing is we really wanted to focus on universal design, and some of you may have heard of this, but universal design emphasizes spaces, products, and systems that are accessible by everyone. It goes beyond standard accessibility and ADA, really aiming to make intuitive, flexible, inclusive designs that accommodate a diverse set of user needs, which I can get more into a little bit later on. But we did have a universal design expert on our team, Dave Hansen. It's actually a picture of him in his kayak. Dave is in a wheelchair, is an avid outdoorsman. So you can see his kayak is outfitted with outriggers to help him from tipping over. Also an avid fisherman. Dave worked for a long time for City of Chicago for MOPD, Mayor's Office of Persons with Disabilities, advancing Chicago's accessibility guidelines. But all of our project sites were to feature an accessible dock with an accessible route between the dock and current or future accessible parking and some other considerations. So not just docks, but making them available to everybody was a big project goal. Won't bore everybody with permitting, but because the 5 sites were owned by different entities, 5 different sets of permits or a different set of permits for every site. So just a gazillion permits, 5 different core permits, 5 different rivers and harbors permits, 5 sets of a lot of permits. And even threatened and endangered species consultation, you think, oh, these are just docks. Well, one of the sites was very close to an eagle's nest on the Fox, so it didn't block the development, but we did have to address a bunch of questions, about eagles and that the dock wouldn't hurt them. Might seem a little silly, but it's just part of that process you have to go through. Bidding and construction. We had a meeting. How was it, Karen? Late summer of 24, and the county realized or had learned that all of these the construction work had to be under contract. Didn't need to be completed, but had to be under contract by December 31st. And we had just picked the sites. So we were able to pull together plans and specs to bid. Kane County publicly bid it and awarded the project in about 3 months, which in my career may be record-breaking time for getting something this big completed and out to bid. Permitting wasn't completed until spring 2025, but that was okay because the contractor really wasn't going to build these things over the winter. And as Karen mentioned, Earthworks was the low bidder and our contractor for the project. Just get into some of the sites, got some pictures of each of them, give you some background. Going south to north, Montgomery Park, which is actually owned by Fox Valley Park District, but the Village of Montgomery had just completed their own project at the park in cooperation with the Park District, put in a veterans memorial, like a bandshell stage, some other stuff. They had hoped to do a launch, didn't have enough money to do it, so when the notice of funding became available, they jumped at it and were interested. So we met out there. You can see the photo on the right is kind of the existing launch, just an asphalt path that goes up to the edge, down to the water. And for all these, there's a lot of similarities between them. I'll just try and highlight, to be honest, where I had good pictures of different things. So not touch on the same things, but touch on some different things for each, but there's a lot of commonalities between the sites. The docks were manufactured by a company called Board Safe. They specialized in providing accessible universal design docks, shipped out on a flatbed truck. You can see here they had to lift them up off the truck and not snag the overhead utility wires. And then the docks, the floating dock assemblies were attached to a concrete abutment. So you can see in the photo on the right, let's see, you can see here's the hinge that docks can get attached to. And there it is installed. The other thing I wanted to point out is if you look at the picture on the left, you can see the water is all the way up to the concrete abutment. Picture on the right, you can see all that stone that's underneath the ramp. So this, just between these two photos, Fox River is about 18 to 24 inches difference. So what I'd mentioned, the water level differences, the fluctuation on the Fox, what we tried to do is have that concrete abutment sort of split the difference between high and low flow. So at low flow, the dock might be down. As the water levels go up, the dock might be straight out, kind of like shown on the left. Then at high flow, well, the dock will still be floating, I think, in all of them, but most of the time the concrete pad on the shoreline would be submerged because it would be flooded out. And well, hopefully nobody's trying to use the launches when the river's that high. Moving on, next one moving north, Clark Island, Batavia Park District. Although this was a Park District project, the city of Batavia was also, say, instrumental. I think the city actually contacted us first and was promoting different sites, and just wanted to have a site in Batavia. A few years earlier, the Park District had created this little ramp down to the river, but in doing so had sort of breached this little berm that sort of protected, or levee, whatever you want to call it, that protected Clark Island from flooding at low flow conditions. Maybe not low flow, but at smaller flood conditions. They cut out this ramp, and then it started flooding Clark Island, including the ball field, and they had to cancel ball games and stuff. So about a year after they built this ramp, they ended up putting these concrete blocks and filling with dirt across the front of it. So they wanted a ramp here, had tried, but didn't quite get it right. So and it's very close to downtown. It's also a historic site. On the right is some about 100-year-old, I mean, not quite, 75-year-old masonry walls that were constructed by WPA, Depression Area Work Progress Administration program. Downtown Batavia is just off to the right. First, we thought maybe the contractor could come up between these walls, and Earthworks said, no, I'm not trying to drive my truck between those tight little walls. They ended up creating a temporary access across that. So there's the Fox River over there. We said this is Clark Island, so there's a back channel area. This is at flood stage where all of Clark Island is surrounded by water. Again, just this is the start of framing up that concrete head wall. So the dock eventually is going to be, out here. But you can see all the steel that goes into the concrete head walls. This dock delivery was interesting. This dock, just because of the configuration, this is the gangway. It was about 40 plus feet long. The one at Montgomery Park was about 24 feet long. So there's just a wide variety, of logistical issues. And then here you can see, here's the dock installed. I'll have some close-ups later on, but there's the gangway that comes down. There's a chute where you can lower your boat down. There's a floating platform. All of them also include some stone, a stream barb to help protect the dock. But you can see a nice aerial view there of that one. Seba Park in South Elgin. This was, dare I say, an easy choice, especially with our focus on universal design. Seba Park is considered the first park in Illinois that was designed to be fully accessible. The playground was designed, a lot of playgrounds have, they call it a transfer station. So, maybe a kid in a wheelchair with other mobility issues can get onto some equipment. Seba Park was designed specifically for people with physical disabilities to be able to play and do all sorts of different things. The bathrooms are accessible. There's tons of accessible parking. There's a big picnic shelter that has accessible paths to it. So the idea of putting an accessible launch, and they had wanted to do a launch, but didn't have funding, again, a common theme. At all the sites, the contractor built this temporary cofferdam so they could work in the dry because, you know, that wall, the abutment wall was right along the shoreline. You can't cast concrete into standing water, at least you shouldn't. And here, the last site at Batavia, we saw the forms being built. Here, the form's completely constructed, a worker standing on top of it, and the concrete truck filling it up with concrete. So here's that abutment wall. And then here it is over in the other picture. You can see they're getting ready to pour the concrete pad. It's right before it. That's Nick, the project manager. And behind him, you can see the stream barb sticking out into the water. And the idea with the stream barb was at kind of low to moderate flows to deflect some of the flow past the docks to help make it a little bit easier to get in and out of them. Then it also, quite honestly, every now and then, especially at the dams, you see like a big log or some other debris tumbling. We were hoping that the stream barb, might help catch some of those big logs or other debris before it slams into the new dock. So they were to help protect the docks a bit too. But there on the left, you can see the installed dock. A couple of the sites, we had enough budget, we could add a bench. The image on the right, again, the aerial, you can see, back here's accessible parking. There's more parking off to the right. There's the accessible bathroom, big accessible playground. So it's just a great site. Bartle, I don't know if it's Bartels or Bartles Park in East Dundee. Another great site, an existing park, but this is Water Street, and it pretty much cut, and the Fox River's off here on the far left. Water Street cut the park off from the river. The village already had a plan to redo Water Street and make it just one way, and slow down traffic, have some parking for the park. So this one was selected. Another kind of fun, cool thing about East Dundee, when the Carpentersville Dam was removed, I mean, you've probably heard they found a bunch of boulders and stone. East Dundee worked with Carpentersville and the Forest Preserve and salvaged a much of that stone. So this pile of boulders is here in this picture, came from the Carpentersville Dam removal and got incorporated into the East Dundee project and also the Carpentersville site. So that was kind of cool to reuse those boulders. Picture on the right is a different view. Most of the other docks, I was looking down at them. Now we're standing on the dock. And this is, I guess it's called the transfer station. There's an overhead grab bar. There's some grab straps here. All the board safe docks include directions on how to use them. The idea is here's the gangplank that you can walk or roll down. This is the kayak or canoe chute. You can put your boat and slide it down there into the tray down here. There's a bench that slides out to help people get in and out of their boats. From there, you can float off the end of the dock, the tray out into the water. And then I had mentioned that the village's proposed changes to Water Street. I don't even think we were done with this project, and they started the work on Water Street. So again, a great commitment by the local community. But it's down to one lane. There's parking. There's they call it a speed table and crosswalk here connecting the park with the launch site. They still have some more work to do, but they've already made some great progress connecting the park to the river. Our last site, Riverside Park, if you know the area, there's not a park there right now. The pre-project conditions when Karen and I first looked at it, it was an old industrial commercial site with some broken up concrete pads and weeds and brush growing everywhere. But the community had already prepared a master plan. Carpentersville had purchased the site, planned to turn it into a community park. including down here was their vision to have a boat launch. So that's what they applied for, and we selected it. And they are currently working on the park, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But because there's no park, part of the Fab Fox project included a temporary gravel parking pad and path through nothing. Otherwise, you'd have this launch and no way to get there. Here you can see the overhead view again. There's the tray where you can lower your boat. No, sorry, that's the gangway. Oops. Floating platform. There's the ramp where you can lower your boat down and the tray down there. Overhead, you can see the stream barb down here to try and affect flow is from the bottom to the top, so it helps push flow past. There's one of the times I was out there, saw a couple guys out there fishing off the dock. I guess officially we don't mind people fishing from the docks. That's great as long as everybody is polite and, there's hopefully no conflicts between fishermen and paddlers. I stopped by yesterday and you can see construction on the park is underway. I think they've got the first phase going where they're putting in the parking lots and the pathways. I think later this year Carpentersville intends to have a second phase of the project, where they start putting in picnic shelters and some of the other site amenities. But park is underway, and hopefully, later this year, next year, we're going to have a great new riverfront park in Carpentersville with an accessible launch. Some closing thoughts. Flow conditions can vary dramatically on the Fox. Some of you may have heard we were talking about DNR closed the Fox River to boating because of high water conditions. But depending on river depth, velocity, etc., I didn't know what to call it other than the paddling experience can vary pretty significantly. I mean, you can be dragging on the bottom and have to portage, or it can be dangerous enough that the DNR closes it. And every paddler should be aware of flow conditions and their own experience or ability prior to paddling. And usability of these docks, not only it will vary with flow conditions. We tried to make them as usable as possible, as much of the year as possible, but that's just not possible, not practical. And one other thought is paddlers of different abilities use the river differently and travel different distances. One of the questions that came up early on, I guess, to be honest, a criticism was somebody's like, oh, that they put a new launch at such and such location. There's one half-mile away, that's a waste. Well, we were talking to specifically Kim Washer in South Elgin. I mentioned Seba Park was the first accessible park, but Kim's very involved with the Illinois Special Recreation Association, and she brought up that although some paddlers may travel 5+ miles, maybe a family out on a weekend might go 2-3 miles. She does like SRA programs for both kids and adults with disabilities. She's done Wounded Warrior Project outings, and they sometimes go 1,000 to 2,000 feet. That's it. So having a couple launches that are accessible, that are half-mile apart, I'm just going to say isn't a waste. And I think that's part of this universal design idea and making the river accessible to everybody. So with that, I'll get off my soapbox and just say thank you for attending. Thanks for listening. We love talking about it, and happy paddling.
Thank you so much, Tim. And we can bring everyone on screen if you would kindly stop your share. And thank you very much. And we have time, about 10 minutes for some questions. So let's see, there were a couple in the chat that I'll go to begin with, and then others, if you don't mind, you're more than welcome to come off mute after a bit. For the docks that extend, this is from Gus Nyberg, that extend into the river, is there anything upstream to protect the docks from trees and other debris that flows from waterways? Well, you kind of touched on that with the barbs, but maybe there are other things that are in place farther upstream from docks?
Generally, the stream barbs were the only thing that were constructed as part of the project to help protect them. The other thing that I forgot to mention, in working with BoardSafe, they were very helpful when we were designing. But you notice all the docks are pointed upstream. So, and that was at BoardSafe's suggestion. So the flow then pushes the dock into the bank rather than if the docks were pointed downstream, the flow would try and rip them away from the bank.
Mhm.
So
Interesting.
those were the two
Interesting.
main
Yeah.
things that we did to try and
If
keep
I
the
could add
docks
to
where they
that,
are. Yeah.
oh yeah, if I could add to that, as Tim pointed out, they do have the hinge. They are connected by a hinge to the cement pad that is on the land. And it is recommended that they're taken out in the winter, just in case there's some icebergs that form in the winter. And I would say that most, if not all of the sites, they did take the docks out over the winter to protect them, and then they can be put back in easily in the spring.
That's great. I have a few questions, but I want to open it up to others here. Are there any questions? And please come off mute and on camera if you want. Either way, and say hello and ask your question. Crickets. Okay, I have an important question. I'm a paddleboarder, so I sit enough, and when I'm on the river, I now stand. And I love paddleboarding on the river. I also lie down on my paddleboard and, take it easy. But I don't know of the width if the launches will work with my paddleboard. I was curious about what the width is of the
Don't
tube.
remember, I don't remember the exact dimension. I'm going to say the width would probably work, but if your paddleboard has fins on the bottom,
Oh yeah,
it probably won't because again, that trough down at the bottom is boards running
Yeah.
longitudinally to help the boat slide.
right,
I think the
right.
fins would
That's a
probably
good
get
point.
caught up on those.
Yeah, they,
But
they
I
get
guess,
caught up on the river when it's low. So, but
yeah, but
for a
then also
paddleboarder, yeah,
the docks also the floating platform. I mean, you can use like called the transfer station, or you can also pull up alongside it.
yep,
There's
and just
nothing to
stand
say
and
that you
go.
can't use the platform there too. That's also part of why we did all the cobble around the docks was, you don't have to wait in line and go one at a time down the chute. You can
Right.
have your whole group go together if you want.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited to try it out this spring. Very excited. Um, did that stimulate any questions? Laurel?
No,
Oh, okay. You just, I thought you went off mute. I got excited. So, well, I was thinking about as you were speaking, and I've known about this project. 'Cause I've known you, Karen, for years, and you had to put a lot into this before you could even apply for the status. How
Mm.
did you cover the costs for all the signage and all the time and everything? Did Kane County, handle that, or how did that work?
Well, the way that it worked was when we first started, part of the project was to create the maps and the brochures and the website, the graphics that went with the website and the maps. And Wisconsin DNR got a grant for us to do that. I think it was about $10,000. So that helped us kind of start us off. The other funding that we needed was for the signage. So what we did was we used our graphic artist using some of that $10,000 to design the signage for each of the sites along the river. Kane County paid for the signs in Kane County on the access sites. And then what I did was I reached out to all of the access site owners in the other counties in Wisconsin and Illinois. And I said, I can send you the graphics, thinking that they probably had a sign shop because towns and park districts and that usually have to make signs or at least
Mhm.
have a place locally that makes signs for them. And so they were all willing to make the signs and install them. And I have to say, the Park Service told us after we submitted our application, they said, you need to have your signs up by March. So, okay, so this was November and we were going to go through winter in Wisconsin and they wanted us to install all of our signs. And we were able to get that done. I couldn't believe that everybody was so cooperative in creating their signs and installing them.
Amazing. Great. So, I'm wondering, is there a way that you'll be tracking, or have you already seen an increase in paddlership on the river since the designation of the Fabulous Fox National Water Trail?
So what happened was, I have been trying to find a good way to do that. It's easy on a bike path because you can put a cable across the bike path that will register how many people
Oh.
or bikes go across it. So I have been looking for something to do that, and I have found a couple of possibilities of possibly motion detector devices that if somebody gets on the river at the access sites, it would count them. But then we also have like the fishermen that you saw in Tim's photograph. Also, I have seen people eating lunch at the Montgomery dock and leaving their bag of McDonald's behind. So, I'm still working on that. And it's not only wanting that type of data, but also for economic development, because one of the things that is important to our county board is the tourism that
Mhm.
is being brought by the new access sites. So that's something that I'm still working on. I have applied for some funding to see if I can hire a consultant to do an economic development analysis. And I did find someone who has some ideas on how we can do that. But I am curious. What I did do is after the pandemic, I contacted our local companies that rent out boats just to see what their numbers were. And they all saw an increase in paddling during the pandemic, and they were interested in buying more boats and increasing their marketing in that way. So we did see some during the pandemic, but
Mhm.
again, hopefully I will be able to find some way to measure that.
And I would think, like, you've got, including me, three board members of Friends of the Fox River on this call. And, so sharing from, various organizations that encourage people to be on the river is a way to gather that information too. Um,
Right. I
so-
also have, if I can add to that
Mhm.
answer, Kim Gilmore does extensive data collection on all of the marketing that she does. And she does digital marketing and where she can actually collect how many clicks. She tells us how many people go to our website, how many people click onto the website, how long they stay on the website. She has all this phenomenal data that I need to sit down and
Mhm.
look at all
Yeah,
the
and have fun
detailed
with.
information.
Yeah.
And then she tells us from year to year, well, I feel that this worked well because you got this many viewers. And
Mhm.
I feel maybe not so much this. So we are using the data that Kim is collecting for us on her marketing.
Yeah, and just like the trails that you talked about for vehicular traffic, maybe putting a clicker across the chute on the launch, or
Yeah,
some
that's
kind of way of tracking the boats that are in and out, because
uh-huh.
presumably you'll also get more traffic on the river because of this wonderful pattern of new launches up and down the river.
I thought it would be fun to put a trail cam pointed at the launch with the motion detector, just every time, just taking
Yeah,
pictures,
yeah,
see what
Right.
people are doing.
What they're
yeah.
Sound
doing, right.
interesting.
Could
Right.
could work. Well, if there aren't any last questions from the group here, I will have a couple of announcements. Any last question or announcement from our group that's still here? I know Friends of the Fox River, we've got our president Gary Swick on and board member Bob Sutton, and we have a big paddle called El Cardinal that's coming up on June 20th this year. We did our first one last year, and that brings out, you can add to your list of paddlership between 70 and 100 people. So there you go. Hey, Karen. And
There you
I
go.
think you're probably one of them. But I want to thank you both so much for, educating us about this wonderful opportunity, which really bridges conservation and recreation, which is such an important place to be. And so thank you both, Karen and Tim. And I also want to thank Friends of the Fox River because they helped circulate this opportunity to learn from you today about the fabulous Fox Water Trail. Upcoming conservation connectors. Just quick announcement in May, we'll have one on dark skies and conservation. The date, probably at the end of May, and that's with Jeff Fowler, who's a photographer and a writer. July 21st at 2 p.m., we'll have all about moths, and that's with Lisa Meyer, who is with the Land Conservancy of McHenry County. And she is also president of McHenry County Audubon Society. So hope you can make those. And if you're not on our mailing list for PSCC, just go to our website and add your name and email, and you will get all these different opportunities to learn through the Conservation Connector series. And this series, again, is on YouTube. It's our Conservation Connector playlist, and we really hope you'll visit us there and watch 3 years coming June of programming that we've been doing the last few years.